On the Zero Wasted Days podcast, I want to inspire you to push the boundaries of what's expected in your life and your business, to challenge norms and your growth edges, and to go after the most audacious dreams, because I've seen for myself that anything is truly possible when you have a vision and are ready to go after it. Are you ready to jump in? Let's go. Hello and welcome back to Zero Wasted Days. As you can see, the studio looks a little bit different today. I am not just here with a guest or even just sitting here by myself. I'm here with a husband and wife duo. I'm really excited that this is the first time I am interviewing a husband and a wife, and I'm going to tell you more about them. But with me today is Amy McLaren and Stu McLaren. Amy is a mom of two, and clearly Stu is as well, not a mom, but they have two kids. She's a CEO. They're both entrepreneurs. She's an adventurer, an author, and the co-founder of the Canadian charity Village Impact. Do you guys know how much I love interviewing Canadians? I just love riffing with people from home, and it always makes me feel, it just warms my heart to be touching base with Canadians. And among other things, and most importantly, Amy is the wife to Stu, who helps experts and authors and speakers and coaches and consultants and lots of different business owners transform their knowledge, expertise, and influence into recurring revenue by launching and growing and scaling business memberships. Now, that was a bit of a mouthful. Welcome, Amy and Stu.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much. We love conducting interviews together because we never know what's really going to happen. So it'll be fun.
There you go. And because I've never done it, I'm going to be like, Amy, Stu, who wants to say it? Who wants to answer the question?
Do you want Amy's version of the story or would you like Stu's?
That too. We could actually ask each question and get you both to answer. But I know you guys are busy and I appreciate you guys taking the time today. It's taken us a few months to schedule this, but I know life is full. And Amy, the first question actually is geared more towards you. So I will ask you the question first. You have a book called Passion to Purpose, and it talks about how finding your purpose can change the world and change your life. Oh, there it is right behind us.
Yeah.
It's a big frame.
I'm a proud husband, so anytime
I bet.
Yeah.
So I would really love to know what that really means to you, and tell us a little bit about your story, about how your own purpose has led you on this life of motherhood and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, for me, the reason why I wrote the book it came out, 2 years ago? For me was that I really believe in following what you love to do, but more importantly, and that is following what you love to do and use it to do more good in the world. And as a CEO of a charity, we often found that people wait to do what they love or they wait to give back, right? And so many people will come up to us and say, I don't have $10,000 yet for a classroom, or I don't have this. And it's like, you don't need that. You don't even need $1. Like, you can use your own passions and what you're passionate about to do more good. You can volunteer in art classes. You can spread the word about a charity or a nonprofit you're passionate about. You can hold the door open for someone. You can just say please and thank you. There are just so many things that we can do to leave the world a better place. So that is where it stemmed from. And it really attaches to our values as a family. We're big in our family of we make money, not only to spend it, but to give it and to save it. And that's always been something we've put in our family, and that whole giving back piece, but always coming back to what is important to you and what lights you up as an individual and as a family. Because I think for Stu and I, you have things that light you up that I don't really enjoy. And I have things that light me up that Stu doesn't like. But those things are important, and those passions are important, and we can use those to do more good.
Beautiful. And so tell me then how your work affects, you said something about family values, affects your kids. And what do you, I know you intentionally do things with them to incorporate them. It's clearly leaving a legacy in this world that is going to carry on. And how do you do that? What do you do with them to bring them into your world and show them and embody those values?
Yeah, I think we show them that we fail, that we do hard things. Since they were little, they've been on stages as we've grown our businesses. We talk about real estate at the dinner table. We talk about how nervous I get speaking in front of thousands of people, but I go and do it anyway because it's the bigger reason behind it. We take them to Africa with us for our charity.
They get woven
What do you say?
into
They
the
get-
conversation. It's not a separate, there's not a separate business life and home life. It's interwoven. And we teach the kids as we learn as well. So one of the biggest lessons for our kids is like when they want something, we as parents didn't like saying no, meaning like, you know, our daughter would say, oh, I want to buy this book, or I want to get that, or my son would be like, I want to get these sneakers or whatever. And we didn't like saying no, but at the same time, like, how do we teach our kids that they can't just get everything that they want because mom and dad are going to buy it for them? And so there were a lot of lessons that we teach. And one of them is, yes, you can absolutely get anything you want. You just got to earn the money to be able to get it. So then the question becomes, how do I do that? Now that's a great question. And so then we talk to them about how they could earn money, how they could do this or how they could do that, or they could start their own business. And our daughter Marla, as an example, she loves to read. And so Amy worked with her, and Marla designed this beautiful reading planner that she has started to sell. And again, she put in the work. Amy helped her, and she's got this reading planner. She's selling it, and she's earning money that she then uses to go and buy her books and her makeups and creams and all the things. So I think that there's a lot of lessons that we learn along the way as being entrepreneurs, but we weave the kids into that experience. So they hear us talking about business. They hear us talking about our failures, as Amy said. They hear us talking about things when they're challenging. Amy's got a big project right now with the charity that there's a lot of uncertainty around. We talk about that so that there's no mystery around it. Same with money, right?
Yeah, it almost becomes, it's like Stu said, we walk the kids to school every day and it's conversations. It's always happening. It's always talking. And I think with the whole money thing that we've been working with them with, they can have anything, but they've got to be creative. And that's, to be an entrepreneur, you have to be creative. You have to put in some time. You have to try things that aren't always going to work and things that aren't going to sell or not sell. She sold pop-ups or
the pop-up,
a few little different things along the way. But this planner has been amazing because she's a reader. Like our daughter is an avid reader since she was 4. She probably polishes off what?
$2 a week?
2 books a week, easy. She's
big bucks.
Go and literally shut off her light because she's reading. And so she follows all these reading bloggers and all this kind of thing. And she created this beautiful planner, but it's all what she loves. A planner for readers, but she is obsessed with reading, which I love. But
it's what we tell
challenging them.
It's what we tell our clients, right? To be in alignment with what lights you up. It's such a beautiful example of that.
Yeah. And I just like how it challenges them to think. Like it's not being shut down. It's the challenge of how can I make this happen? What do I need to
That's a key thing is the kids see us, we weave it into everyday conversation, and then we give them building blocks like good questions. And a good question, whenever they want something, is to ask, how can I get X, Y, Z? And that just turns their brain on. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson that we've learned as parents, and weaving business and life together is pulling out the key lessons. And one of them is just to ask great questions that lead to amazing outcomes.
Yeah, beautiful. Oh, it's really inspiring because we try to do a lot of that ourselves, and just hearing other examples of it. Yeah, it's just, I know it's going to be inspiring for people listening as well, because most of my audience, many are moms and dads, and trying to really juggle and wear all the hats is hard, is one of the biggest challenges as entrepreneurs. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping people get it the right way around and learn how to lead with that life first, because everything else, as soon as you get those foundational elements of home and health and having hobbies and taking care of your own happiness, then everything else follows. And I think if our kids can then learn that, I think that the next generation, we can be a bit more positive about it.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And I think the most important part is we talk as adults about these dreams or things that we want to do. And it's just so important for our kids to see what's possible in life through us living our life, right? We talk about it, but we have to show them that we're putting effort in, or we're trying, or we're doing the best with the time we have that's available to us.
It's one of the things that I loved when I read Amy's book, because she talked about how important it is for us to lead by example for our kids. So if we're encouraging our kids to chase their dreams, but we're not chasing our dreams ourselves, then there's a subconscious message that's being delivered to our kids, whether we realize it or not. But the opposite is also true. If we talk about them chasing their dreams, and then they're seeing us chase our dreams, they're seeing us pursue the things that are uncertain, that we don't have all the answers, but we're figuring it out anyway. That also sends a message to our kids. And I think that it's really important for us to be mindful of the messages that we are sending, both consciously and verbally, as an example, but also unconsciously. What messages are we communicating to our kids as well?
Yeah. And so how do you...
It's not always.
No, it's not always perfect. And maybe that's a good segue into, you juggle a lot, like clearly scheduling, and your lives are really full. And so how do you stay in alignment with all of those family values? And what are some of the actual practical things that you do to keep the ship afloat?
Yeah, so I would say there's a few things. I would say,
Okay, before we go into this, Amy is the organizer of the family. Let's be real clear. This ship would not stay afloat if it weren't for Amy's organization.
Well, we learned early on. We've been married for 16 years. And we learned very early on that we've got to stay in our lanes and what we're good at. And for the first few years of our businesses, I tried to make Stu come to the meetings with the lawyers and the accountants and listen to what they had to say, because I felt that was really important and that he needed to listen. And there was one meeting that he said he had to go to the bathroom, and then he left, and he came back and he sat down on the floor and didn't show up at the meeting again. And I was like, okay, because he likes the one-page overview. He likes to know the big picture. He doesn't want anything to do with the nitty gritty, because that's just where he's good at. He's good at the big ideas. He's good at the marketing. I am much better at the little finer details. So I take over now. I stopped putting that on his schedule, or it's just and now I am the one that coordinates with our financial planner, the tax specialist, the lawyers. Like, the lawyers legit come to me when they want some of the other people in the company to sign something because they haven't heard from them, and they know that I'll get it done. So we stay in our boundaries, which I think is one thing that.
And here's a practical thing. Like, on the other side of this camera, we have 2 gigantic wall calendars that map out our lives for the next 2 years. And some people might say, 2 years? Like, how structured is your life?
I am a bit of I like digital, but I like the big view.
But here's the reality of it. We have multiple businesses, we have a charity, and we have kids. And our kids are in activities where there's big events throughout the year. So here's a practical thing that we do. The reason we've got 2 years of calendars on our walls is because we go and put the big rocks in first. So the big rocks for us are like our daughter's riding competition. She's an equestrian horseback rider. So
even before that, it's what you want to do and I want to do as a couple. And our
for sure, we'll get there for a second. I'm getting there. But like the big rocks, like the kids, kids competitions. So for our daughter, that's riding. For our son, he's a national skipping champion. So like, he competes at the provincial level, he competes at the national level. When he turns 12, he'll compete at the international level. So those competitions are on. As Amy said, like, other big rocks are like getaways as a couple, getaways as a family. Those are on the calendar first. And then other things get put on the calendar around those big rocks. We also have our charity trips that we do every other year. Sometimes we have charity events that we do every year, like our garden games, as an example. Like, those things get put on the calendar. And then all the business stuff, it fills the rest of the calendar. But if you don't get the big rocks in first, the business stuff will override everything. And then you're not staying true to living your life.
And what I would say to that, with all the scheduling and stuff too, something that we've done is really set boundaries around time away from home and Stu away from the kids. So Stu gets asked to speak quite a bit. I do too, but you are more on stages speaking on marketing. And we've said no numerous times, because if that means Stu's away for more than a week in a month, it's just too much. It's not how we want to live and be part of as a family at this part in our life and how old the kids are. So setting those boundaries around time away. COVID, like, we didn't obviously.
It was amazing because we couldn't go anywhere. So like,
But in the last year, 18 months, the world's picked up again, right? Like, things are happening more frequently. So we've gone back to those rules we put and boundaries we put in place as a family as we're planning. And if an opportunity comes up and it's a really good opportunity and you don't want to miss it, then the kids and I go, or like
Okay.
we make sure that we come that
It
way.
works.
Yeah, and I would say it was a lot easier when the kids were younger to bring everybody. Now that they're a little bit older and they're, as we said, entrenched in their activities and stuff, it has meant that it's become more difficult to just pick everybody up and go. And all that has meant is that it's just made it easier from a decision-making standpoint, because then I just have to turn down those opportunities.
Yeah.
And oftentimes entrepreneurs get fearful that if they turn down opportunities, those opportunities won't come again. But the reality of it is that this is a season of life. These precious years, we will not get back in our kids' lives.
Yeah.
And there's a great book written by a friend of ours named Jim Shields, and it's called 18 Summers. And the premise of the book is that we only have 18 summers with our kids before they get to that age where they're going to leave the nest, so to speak. And so every year, you're subtracting a year. Our daughter is turning 13 this year. That means we've got 5 summers left. And that it just puts everything into perspective. It's, oh my gosh, I can't waste this time. And so when you talk about 0 wasted days, this is it, right? And so we have to just come to the conclusion that this is a season in our life where we have these hard boundaries so that we can protect that time with our family and our kids, and be there in the moments when they're competing and those but also in the in-between moments when there's nothing and we're just talking and discussing and sharing and experiencing life together.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's 2 things. So one of the things that you do, we talked about just very briefly before we started recording, was that, and what's on your websites too, is around helping us see that our businesses can allow us to be more present in our lives and the things that matter. This is so hard for entrepreneurs because it's a priority game, right? It's a game of what is the most important. And especially early, mid-stage entrepreneurs, even ones who are scaling to 7 and 8 figures, it's always a juggle of what is the biggest priority. So how do you think that entrepreneurs can get better at that? Have your big calendar.
What I have learned is actually something that is really scary in the moment to put into practice. One of the things that I've learned is the less available you are, many times, the more in demand you become. So the less available you are, the more in demand you become. And I learned this years ago with one of my first businesses. There was a graphic designer that we really wanted to hire. He was incredible. And we loved his work. And we reached out to connect with him. We had a project that we were looking to launch the next month. And we reached out to him and he said, I'd love to work with you. My calendar is booked for the next 7 months. So I could start working on your project 7 months from now. And we were like, 7 months from now? We're like, that's insane. We want to launch this project next month. But guess what happened? Because we really wanted to work with him, we shaped our calendar around his calendar. And I've never forgotten that moment, because what it taught me was the less available you are, the more in demand you become. And so many times as entrepreneurs, we get scared to set those hard boundaries because, as I said before, we're afraid that people won't want to work with us or won't want to do business with us. That's not always the case. It's like back in the day when mom told us we couldn't have a cookies. What did we want the most? We obsessed about actually getting the cookies, right? So it's the same sort of premise. And so I think we did multiple things as we were learning a lot of this together, but we had conversation about it. What's important? How should we structure our lives? What do we want to do? And that's one of the greatest gifts that we have as entrepreneurs. Like the greatest gift is that we get to design our lives. We're not at the mercy of somebody telling us when we can or can't go on vacation, do this with our family. We're not at the mercy of somebody telling us we have to do this at that time. Like, we get to decide. So we just got to be intentional about it. And that's one of the things that Amy and I'm grateful for, because she's certainly led us in that conversation of every year sitting down, thinking about what are our priorities? Are we designing a life around those priorities? Are those priorities changing because of the season of life that we're in? And if so, what does that mean? And we have those conversations regularly, and then everything else falls around that. What would you say?
Yeah, it's true. It's the conversation. I think it's like any relationship, right? It's just the constant conversation around what you're looking to get out of life, because it does change. Like, we are in a different season right now with our kids than we were last year, even the year before. And I think it's just the constant check-in in your life and conversations and making sure that you're on the track, because before you know it, a year goes by and then it's 5 and then you're
Yeah.
like, wow, like it's time
Time's flying.
flies. So it's like
Yeah.
those constant check-ins of just making sure that
Yeah.
you're aligned to
Yeah.
what it is, and it
Yeah.
changes, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I think it's so powerful because it really is about, I think everything is about intentionality. It's about being
Mhm.
intentional about what's on that calendar. I have a thing that I do with my clients called the 20-year plan. So the 2-year plan is nothing on the 20-year
Yeah.
plan. It's what do you want to do? When I turned 50, I've always said I wanted to go on a safari in Africa. It's not far away. And because there's so many different cogs in the wheel that are moving in the family, you have to look at, is that a good year for when my son's finishing high school? And no, it probably isn't. You got to jig things around. But I think also that's on a big scale, that kind of intentionality about what we want to create with our lives, hence us being in France, you guys doing what you're doing. But also, I think at a granular level, do you guys ever wake up, and I don't know if this is possible for Stu, or maybe he always just puts on a happy face, but do you
No,
ever
this
wake
is
up on a
honestly-
Monday and say, I can't do this. This is too hard? Because that's a real thing that entrepreneurs have.
No, it totally is a real thing. 90% of the time, what everybody sees in camera and Stu is the Stu you see
Yeah.
everyone else sees. And
Yeah.
we get that. We've had that a few times where people are like, I can't believe it. You're just the same person that you are when you're speaking on a webinar. But it is. It's the same way you show up all the time. It was hard in COVID. I think you went through a bit of a funk during COVID.
Yes, I'm definitely always high energy. Yes, my number one strength on StrengthsFinder is positivity. So I'm a walking, talking cheerleader. That's just natural how I'm wired.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that I don't have days where I doubt myself. It doesn't necessarily mean I don't have days where I'm not struggling. As Amy mentioned, COVID was actually an eye-opener for me in a huge way. Like the beginning of COVID, I joked that it was like a blessing in some respect because I am more introverted, believe it or not. Amy's more the extrovert. I'm more the introvert. So if I had a choice of traveling and being with a group of people or staying home by myself, I would pick home by myself all day long. And so when COVID hit and it basically meant that we all had to stay home, I was like, sweet. You know what I mean? Tell me that like businesses are figuring out how to bring more stuff to me here so I don't have to go anywhere. This is amazing. But then a year into it, because in Canada, we had pretty strict lockdowns. And a year into it, I didn't realize it, but I went into a serious funk.
You miss the human.
And in August of 2021, my days would look like we'd always wake up, we always have breakfast with the kids, we always walk the kids to school together, and then I would come back and I would sit in a chair and I would stare out the window. And I legit was not doing anything. Like I was like, there was like a 2 or 3 month period where that was my day. And I could not shake myself out of it. I'd never experienced anything like that. And looking back in hindsight, I think it was a accumulation of like creative burnout. I think we weren't around people. I wasn't feeding my brain with positivity. It was like all the negativity in the news. And I hate to say this, but I didn't even talk to Amy about it because I was ashamed about it. I was embarrassed by it. And it wasn't until we had an event that was on the calendar that I was training for, that we were training for, where we're essentially climbing the equivalent of Mount Everest in 36 hours.
Jesse, it's
and it was something that yes. And I was training for it. And then we went to it. And this was the first event that we were around other people outside of COVID. And it was like transformative for me because I finally felt that energy again and I could see the difference. And it was a reminder to me that I needed to be around that more often. And that's when I opened up to Amy and started sharing, like, I've been struggling and I don't know what it is and I don't know what I'm going through, but
you did that, and then we did a mastermind. You got asked to consult, and you went down. And I think that both of those events reminded you, like all of it, like the importance of human interaction and community. Feeling a part of something. And when
and feeding my brain with positivity. That's why podcasts like yours, Suzanne, are so important because we've got to feed our brains with good nutrients as well. It's very easy to get swallowed up in the negativity of the world. Like
Yeah.
you could just look at the headlines and you could see war, you could see inflation, you could see like a job loss, you could see all this stuff that could immediately create this feeling inside that the world is collapsing and what is little old me going to do? And that's where I was. And what I would say is just that anybody can get themselves out of that. You just have to come back to intention. We realized after those two events that I needed to be around people again.
You did want stuff on my calendar.
I did want stuff on the calendar. I started listening to podcasts again, listening to classic self-help from like Jim Rohn and Tony Robbins and so forth.
But
And
the funny thing is, Stu has always listened to self-development. When we started dating back in the day when there were no iPhones or podcasts, like it was cassettes and CDs. And like you were always listening to self-development. And in our early part of our relationship, he would listen to self-development and I would listen to not even audiobooks, just music. And then after about a couple of years of dating, I started listening to self-development and it really did change my projection and my career and where I was. But yeah, as a whole, you've always been.
But so all that to say, like some days, yeah, you're not going to feel yourself. And you got to give yourself grace. There's a million and one things that we as entrepreneurs are navigating and handling that any normal person wouldn't understand. And that's okay, because that's, to me, that's the price that we pay to be able to have the freedom that we have to be able to live the life that we want. We wouldn't trade it for anything. Like there are some days when we go to bed and Amy's wants to fire off about a million and one things that are going through her mind.
I'm working on that.
And I'm just like, babes, it's time to shut down. Like it's bedtime. Like my brain is not working right now.
But last night you did that.
Wow.
Yeah.
What did I say?
To go to bed and you did. Anyway, we're working on boundaries about talking about business. Past a certain time. Because we run things together and there's a lot.
But all that to say, we wouldn't trade it for the world. Entrepreneurship, being an entrepreneur, running our own business has been the greatest gift that we could have ever been given. It's created a life for us that we couldn't even imagine when we started dating over 20 plus years ago. It's created a life where we created this amazing charity that has now built 15 schools serving more than 5,000 kids every single day. That wasn't even on our radar. And so for us, we're so incredibly grateful to be entrepreneurs in this period of time and to be able to get to do the work that we get to do.
Yeah. And so those, just going to take it on from that Village Impact remark, is one of the things that you do in addition to building the schools and resourcing the schools is providing access and knowledge to entrepreneurial skills. Even though you're imparting that on them, what have you learned from and I say this because I was in Africa and the entrepreneurial spirit is alive and thriving. And I'm sure that there's stuff that you've taken, because I know I did. I brought home just such a renewed kind of anything is possible belief when you see what they can do. What have you learned from them in imparting your knowledge as entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I personally love the initiative and the creativity on the tiniest things, whether it's like selling the potatoes or what they even do on their phone. Like it's incredible what they can accomplish on their phone. And we're even far behind in that.
We had a moment years ago, like this was years and years ago in the early days of our charity. We were visiting this community that we were looking to potentially build a school, and we were getting a tour of the community, and some of the mamas had invited us into their huts, and these are like mud and stick huts. And so we went in and they made us a cup of tea and we were chatting with them. And then afterwards we left the hut, and this one particular woman, she was in her probably early 20s. We're in this village that has no electricity, like no running water, no roads, no nothing. And we come out of the hut and she says to me, "Are you on Facebook?" And I was like, what? Like my brain just was not there. And I said, "Yeah, I'm on Facebook." And she's, "Oh, well, what's your name?" And she's looking me up on her phone, and we became friends in that moment. And I was just like, what is happening? This is so crazy. And what is so inspiring about Africa, and specifically, obviously, we spend most of our time in Kenya, is that they're almost skipping a whole like generation of evolution. Like they, as Amy said, are more advanced in the way in which they bank with their phone, they sell with their phone, they buy with their phone, they communicate with their, like
The way the money flows through the phone.
yeah,
works,
they're like so much more advanced. And so it's like they're skipping a whole generation of evolution. But the thing that I think for me, Amy touched on, is just they're so stinking resourceful.
Yeah.
Like I think in Western culture, there's a tendency to get a little bit lazy. If it's not served up on a
Or
platter,
if it's not,
it's too hard or it's too difficult or whatever. There, it's like they have next to nothing. And they're finding a way. They're figuring it out. And that to me is so incredibly inspiring. Here's a story. Last year, we were in Kenya for the opening of our most recent school.
Oh, yeah.
And this was like a huge moment because this was our 15th school. It was our biggest school by a long shot. It was a school, it's an all-girls high school. So roughly 900 girls will go to this school. Wow. And we, in fact, had the president, I'm just looking over here.
Right here.
Oh, yeah. We had the president of Kenya, who was there to open the school with us. It was like this amazing moment. We've never had the president join us before. This was the first school that he's ever opened in his presidency.
We've had like other other government officials, but never the president.
So imagine, this is a big moment for us. So we open the school, there's presentations, there's like thousands of people in the community.
There's security, there's helicopters like flying above them. They shut down the town.
It's like a whole thing. So then we finish the presentations, we thank the president. He goes on his red carpet, gets in the car, his entourage leaves. Legit, about 15 minutes later, I had this person come up.
I feel like it wasn't even 15 minutes.
He taps me on the shoulder and I said, yeah. He said, would you be interested in this? And it was a framed picture.
So this picture, the frame broke.
The frame broke. It was this picture framed. And I was like,
with a plastic wrap over it, like packaged.
Yeah, like ready for you to put in your suitcase.
Wait a minute. I'm like, wait a minute. That happened like 15 minutes ago. I'm like, how did you produce that? He's like, oh, I have a printer in my car. And he was like the official president for photographer.
We had 3 different versions too.
And I was just like, I was blown away. But that's a perfect example of entrepreneurship in action. Like he didn't have super whiz bang printers or super whiz bang professional gear, but it was the recency of that moment happened 15 minutes prior. He recognized the significance of that moment, took a picture of that moment, framed it, and put shrink wrap around it, came back to us, and of course we bought it.
Clearly you were buying it. Yeah, you weren't leaving it.
But it's just an example of the resourcefulness. That's one of the things that I appreciate most about the people in Africa, specifically in Kenya, that we get to interact with. It's just how resourceful they are with how little they have.
Yeah, I agree. I talk to my kids regularly about it when we're having those like entitled kind of conversations about various things at home and talk about the kids that used to have to walk to get water for an hour or whatever before school in the mornings. And another reason why I want to take my kids over there, because it's just what you take from that in terms of especially that resourcefulness and like the women. And so this was the work I did with a charity called the Hunger Project. I don't know if you guys know about it. But they put money into the hands of women because the women are doing 10 times more with the money at a grassroots than the men are. And so it was just, it was a phenomenal experience. And I just think there was so much that inspired me as an entrepreneur that I still draw on from, and it was 10 years ago that I went. Yeah, I just
you have to come with us, Suzanne.
I know.
On our next donor trip, our last trip, we had 75 people with us, and about a third of them were kids under the age of 20. So people brought their kids.
Cool. And when's your next trip?
Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Is it on the calendar?
Yes. It'll be
July 2025.
July 2025.
The year that I turned 50, and I'm supposed to go to Africa when I turn 50. So
it's lining up, Suzanne. It's just a done deal.
Very tempting, very tempting. And in the summer, right? Because I lived in Australia for a long time and the kids were in school in July. But yeah, summer, kids can come. Because people that are in my audience are entrepreneurs. We talked about the fact that it can be messy, it can be hard. One of the things that I try to inspire my clients to do is to think of how they can be unique in the market. And we know how cluttered it is, and to think about innovation. And I think clearly you guys thrive off innovation as you've been part of many business ideas and creators yourselves. And so how do you think the entrepreneur, the woman who's been slogging it out for 5 years, can still stay in that kind of innovation mind as an entrepreneur and continue to create and to continue to evolve when she's still caught in the messy middle?
How do you do it, my love?
You know what? We talked about this the other day, and I feel like sometimes when we have so many ideas, we're trying to be innovative as an entrepreneur. It's okay sometimes if an idea isn't working and you keep trying to put it down for a little bit. Like I ran a mastermind for 5 years.
Mhm.
And I recently, this past year, put it aside because the charity we've got a lot of things, exciting things happening with the charity and for time's sake. But I was feeling a bit with my mastermind. I loved it, but I wasn't really enjoying it as much as I was before. And I think sometimes it's okay if you're being innovative and you're not feeling that same original idea that you had that maybe was really successful and you want to stop doing it for a while. It's okay to have a break and create something new or create a new offer or create something different.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I think we hold on to ideas or something for too long and then you feel bad because you're letting it go if it's making money or if it's doing something. Like before I was an entrepreneur, I was a teacher for 10 years in the public system in Canada. And it took me, now when I look back at it, too long to let it go. I held on to that identity in that space for
But that's a key thing that you
probably
said.
more,
The
but
key thing you said there is identity.
it's the identity of that. And I think sometimes if something is going really well, or if it's not, you feel like you got to hold on to it a little longer.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay to put it down or move it to next year and try something different to stay in that creative space. And then
That takes courage.
and then come
Yeah, it
back
does.
to it and you're more alive and you're more, maybe there's another new idea that you can breathe into it to breathe it back to life.
Here's a perfect example. Can I pick up on your mastermind example? So she did struggle with that because one, she didn't want it was a big income decision, right? Like that mastermind was earning hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that's not like a small decision to make. Number two, Amy had evolved from her teacher identity. So she broke that, which was a massive, massive breakthrough because that really held her back for a long time. And then, so she had started to develop this identity that she was an entrepreneur. And her thought was, if I let this mastermind go, which is the primary source of the income in her business, am I an entrepreneur anymore?
Am I? Yeah.
And so like, yeah. And so there was like this, again, it comes back to the identity. But what's interesting is like, to Amy's point, it's come full circle because she's working on a project right now that is in Kenya that is 100% in her wheelhouse in so many overlapping areas. And a part of that is actually facilitating masterminds in this beautiful building that we are looking to purchase. So it's amazing to me how like it was so hard for her to let go, but once she had created space, her entrepreneurial mind was percolating, and it was a matter of time before she landed in a much better place with a much bigger, better idea than she ever would have before. And so I think that innovation comes from creating space. When we're so in the weeds and we're so focused on the things and we don't have space to think and breathe, it's really hard to be innovative. Like we just got back from a family vacation and I did more reading during that family vacation than I have in months. I read 3 books. I came back lit up and on fire, so many ideas because I had space. I had space to just think and breathe. Amy's done this in her entrepreneurial career. I've done it in mine where I decided to sell the shares of my first software company at a time when it was doing great. It was a multi-million-dollar business, great business partner, great team. But I just knew that there was like, that was not going to be my long-term end game. And that was a hard conversation for me to have with myself, but ultimately to bring it up with Amy. And she was so incredibly supportive. She's just like, look, like, I believe in you. Like, we'll make this happen. And that space led to something much, much bigger that gets me way more excited. And so I think space is really important. So then the question becomes, how do you create space? And we have a good friend who wrote a great book on that, Dan Martell, called Buy Back Your Time.
And this has been a huge, I think, part of our life for a long time. Like his book is excellent. You should definitely check it out. But the whole premise is delegating and getting people to help you do a job. And Marla's 13, 12 years ago, we decided to say, no to some things in our life so we could afford to get help at home. And that's not necessarily, it's like house manager. So it didn't really help with the kids. It was more honestly for us, a big stress was cooking, was laundry, like all of those things that we don't like to do. Maybe some of you love laundry, but like hated laundry. And so we actually hired somebody to help. And we have someone now that's been with us for 5 years. We've always had someone, and I'll never let that person go because they are the glue. They are literally the glue that keeps us together.
They create space.
They create the space to be more present with our kids, to be more present in our business, and to have those date nights for those windows of time that we can be creative and lean into that. And in Dan's book, he talks a lot of different ways about how you can delegate, buy back your time by looking at what you're doing and taking like an audit of your life and what can you get to get help with. And even if it's not somebody full-time right now, could it be just laundry? Could it be someone that comes in and preps healthy snacks so you have healthy snacks to go to in the fridge and you're not grabbing the bag of chips and the chocolate bar because it's easier, convenient. So that's been a huge thing for us. We joke that if everything like lost everything, that person right now it's Sheila who's been with us for 5 years, but I would be the very last person that we would let go because they've reduced so much stress and they create the space.
And the space is the important thing for innovation, because when you're so close to it and you're in the weeds and a million one things are going through your mind, you don't have the capacity and the bandwidth to think creatively and innovatively. But when you've got space, that's when the breakthrough ideas happen.
Yeah. And that's the benefit of going away on masterminds and going away on retreats and things like that, and family holidays. If you can really disconnect, that's really when people feel so much more. I know I do. You go away for the weekend, you're like, we got to do that more often. It's just really, it's such a powerful way to invite new ideas in and just help you stay on the forefront of the next thought. Because I think the worst thing is just getting complacent and getting bored of what you're doing. And then you don't feel that you'll be staring out the window like you were potentially, which is a business that's not dead in the water, that's not probably thriving when the person isn't thriving themselves.
Yeah, for sure.
And so one final little question for you guys. I always ask the same question, and I do a little mashup at the end of the season because it's really interesting to see how everybody answers. My question last year was different, but the one that I have for this year is around the word zero wasted days. And sure, you've probably already answered this in a way, and the concept of creating a life by your own design. How important is this for you guys, and how might you be embodying this in your life?
I think it's the most important thing. We don't really have that long on this earth. And at the end of the day, we want to create a legacy that lives much longer than our lifespan. That means certainly that legacy can live through our kids. Eventually, one day, maybe, hopefully, our grandkids. It means a legacy.
I'm not ready to be a grandma.
It maybe means through our business and our business living on beyond us. It might be our charity and a charity living on beyond us. But those things don't just happen. And
it's like when you say legacy, it's the little things. It's every day we're leaving part of our legacy in the decisions that we make, the intentions we create.
And I think so much of it is actually not one single big act, but it's a accumulation of a whole bunch of little acts. And every single day I write our kids a little note in their lunch, and we have them we put them up on the fridge. At the end of the school year, the fridge is just covered.
It is cute because now the kids in the class read notes.
But I have no idea if that's having a positive effect or not.
It is.
I'm sure it is.
But to me, I think about the cumulative effect of that. We walk our kids to school every single day, and our kids moan and groan about it. Can't we just drive?
Because we're probably one of the only 3 parents in the whole school that walk our kids to school. But we will always do it. Even like Marla's going to be in grade 8 next year, but we will still walk, not because they can do it themselves, but that 20 minutes of conversation and connection is worth it. And so we'll walk until they're in grade 8.
And it's just like these moments, and the same goes for in our business. It's really important that we design our lives because we just don't really have that much time. And if you put it off and put it off and put it off, you just never know what will happen. But I think of like my uncle, my mom's brother, he worked his entire life, worked till he was in his early 60s, and had every intention of doing all the things after he retired. He's out on the golf course. The very first time he was out on the golf course, had a heart attack and died.
Yeah.
And I think about, he had waited all that time to finally do the thing. And the very first time he was doing the thing, he passed away.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's just like, why wait? Like, we have more opportunity now than we ever have. We live in the greatest time ever to be an entrepreneur. Do you know how hard it was like 2 decades ago to start a business? Like,
even 1 decade ago.
Even 1 decade ago. Like,
hear you.
we live in such an amazing time.
Yeah.
And so I put this in perspective for people when they are thinking about their audience and they're like, oh, I've only got 5,000 people on social following me. Oh, only 2,000 people have watched this video. I'm like, time out, 1,000 people?
A lot of people. Fill
Can
a
you
stadium.
imagine being in a room with 2,000 people that you get to speak to?
Yeah.
Let's give it some perspective. Like, we live in the most amazing time.
Yeah.
And so, in fact, this is one of the books that I reread when we were on vacation. It's called The Happiest Man on Earth.
Oh, that's
and
good.
I read this every couple of years. And the reason is because this book, man, it just brings everything into perspective. And it just reminds us of what an incredible time that we live in right now. And so we are just really focused on taking advantage of the time that we live in and living an amazing life and leaving a legacy and leaving a positive impact on as many people as possible through our work, through our friendships, through our charity, and the ripple effect that all of that has on others. And we live in an incredible time, and I would just encourage everybody to take full advantage of it.
And herein is exactly the reason why I wanted to have you guys on the podcast, because that is just, it's totally in alignment with how I live, what this podcast is about, what I love to try to inspire other people to truly do. And thank you so much for just being a shining light for people to see that you can do businesses differently. You can live your life, you can live it to the max and create it how you want it and still be a busy, successful entrepreneur. And it's just incredible. And I would love you to tell my audience where they can find you, how they can support you and find your businesses.
Yeah, so I spend most of my time is on the Instagram platform. So it's Amy Stu McLaren. You can find me there. And then I have some links to my book, Passion to Purpose. And then the charity is on there as well. But our charity is Village Impact and has the handle Village Impact.
Yeah, so definitely go check out the charity, Village Impact. And then you can find me similarly. I'm on Instagram, Stu McLaren. I answer all my own DMs. But my website is probably the easiest place to find the links to all the things. And the website is stu.me.
It's a complicated URL.
Yeah, it's the easiest URL in the world.
Did you get that when you were born or something?
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. Of course, we'll put all of the links and things in the show notes as well. And guys, I just really appreciate the time that you've both taken out of both of your diaries to help inspire my audience here and help have this conversation. It's been really impactful for me as well. And I'm already thinking about July 2025. Yeah, watch this space.
Love it. Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate you.
No problem. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to Zero Wasted Days. I truly appreciate you being here, downloading the episodes every single week and listening to me in your ears, on the go, wherever you might be listening. I also really love all of the feedback that many of you are giving me inside Instagram, on Facebook, and here on YouTube. I always appreciate when you share, when you review, and when you rate my podcast. It really just gives me the feedback that what I'm talking about is resonating with you. It tells me which episodes actually that you guys love more than others potentially, and it helps me be able to keep creating in a way that is in alignment with what you're after. But I really appreciate you being here, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.